The Chicago sun hit hard that morning, bouncing off the chrome of a black Cadillac Escalade. Parked like a predator on the Gold Coast street, Alara Quinn didn't see a symbol of wealth or danger. She saw sanctuary, a temporary shield against a world that never gave her a break. Her interview at Romano's, the city's most exclusive Italian restaurant, started in 4 minutes. 4 minutes to transform from a broke waitress surviving on luck and cheap coffee into someone who looked capable, someone who might actually belong. She leaned over the passenger side window, fingers fumbling under the silk of her silver blouse. The bra strap that had been slipping all morning finally gave up, the safety pin she had jammed. In for support surrendered, clattering against the leather seat. Come on, Alara muttered through clenched teeth, twisting her body like a contortionist trying to impress a jury that didn't exist. Just 2 hours. Just hold together for 2 hours. Inside the Escalade, Dominic Valenti watched. His eyes were sharp, predatory, absorbing every small frantic movement. 20 minutes parked here, waiting for his cousin to finish, collecting protection money across the street, a boring, routine Tuesday. And then she appeared, blonde, chaotic, frantic, turning his armored car into her personal dressing room. She was a disaster, and yet mesmerizing. Her knees pressed against the seat, stockings ripped from ankle to thigh, scuffed shoes pressed unevenly against the floor. She wrestled with a nearly empty lipstick tube like a soldier clutching her last weapon. Her reflection in the tinted window reflected panic and determination in equal measure. Okay, lipstick, she whispered to herself, tilting the tube like it held the answers to her life. She smeared it on, smudged slightly, wiped it off with her pinky, and forced a tiny, hopeful smile until horror hit. A massive piece of spinach, relentless and bold, was wedged between her front teeth. Oh, seriously? Universe, seriously? She gasped, disbelief threading her voice. Seriously? This is too much. Dominic's smirk deepened. He should look away. Let her have this private humiliation. But something about her chaos, the way she refused to collapse under pressure, made it impossible. Alara clawed at her reflection, making faces, constipated, terrified, possessed, fingers and teeth, eyes wide, maximum desperation. Get out! Get out! She hissed at the spinach like it were a personal enemy. Dominic's finger hovered over the window button, a terrible idea. His rules were clear. No civilians involved. No fourth walls broken, no masks lifted. But today, rules felt negotiable. There was fire in her green eyes, a spark no chaos could extinguish. She was chaos and resolve all at once. He leaned back, letting the smirk linger. Blood, money, calculated. Moves, his world. Rarely did genuine moments surface. But here, reflected in his tinted window, was something raw, unfiltered, magnetic. Alara straightened, wiped her teeth, adjusted the blouse one last time and drew a shaky breath. Professional, confident, ready, or pretending to be. 2 minutes until the Gold Coast would judge her fate, and she had to survive. Dominic watched her rise, the chaos still intact, still defiant. And in that instant, he knew this storm of a woman would either ruin his life or make it more interesting than he ever imagined. And for now, he didn't care which. The doors of Romano's opened with a soft chime, and Alara Quinn stepped inside, the world of luxury and control pressing against her like a physical weight. The aroma of truffle, roasted, garlic, and fresh basil hit her first, followed by the quiet hum of polished silver, crystal, chandeliers, and whispered Italian phrases. She felt instantly out of place, a misfit walking into a palace built for the rich and untouchable. Her heels clicked nervously against the marble floor as she approached the host stand, straightening her blouse, smoothing her skirt, trying desperately to erase the chaotic storm she had just been in outside. But chaos had a way of clinging, like a shadow she couldn't shake. "Ms. Quinn?" a polished voice asked. Yes, that's me," she said, forcing a smile. Her hands were trembling slightly. She was led through the restaurant by a waiter who glided like he was on a stage, and for every step, Alara felt the weight of 1,000 eyes on her. Staff in crisp uniforms, wealthy patrons, murmuring in Italian accents. Everyone poised, perfect, and her. Disaster wrapped in silver, silk. At the far end of the restaurant, at a corner table tucked just out of view, Dominic Valenti sat. He didn't make a move to be noticed, yet he was impossible to ignore. Eyes tracking her every step, taking in the way her hands fumbled with her bag, the slight wobble of her heel, the fragile confidence trying to mask chaos. His smirk was gone now, replaced with that sharp, calculating gaze of a predator weighing prey. Alara slid into the chair opposite the interviewer, a man whose polished charm barely hid a critical eye. Questions were asked, her experience, her strengths, why she wanted the job. Ilara answered, words coming out haltingly, sometimes stumbling, but always with a spark that refused to be dimmed. Her gaze flicked to the window and froze for a heartbeat. Outside, the Escalade gleamed in the morning sun, but inside, Dominic's dark eyes met hers for a fleeting moment. She couldn't place the feeling, a chill, a pull, a dangerous curiosity. Then he was gone from view. Had she imagined it? The interview dragged on, each question a minefield. Ilara twisted her skirt in her hands, fumbled with her hair, and gave answers that sounded more polished than she felt. At one point, she spilled a sip of water, her cheeks burning, and she cursed under her breath. The interviewer raised an eyebrow, expecting embarrassment. She swallowed it down, laughed lightly, and continued as if nothing had happened. Dominic, silently observing from the street through the tinted window, allowed himself a rare smirk. She was resilient. Chaotic, yes, but resilient. He liked that, and it was clear she didn't even know he existed. Yet she had already drawn his attention, his assessment, his obsession. Finally, the interview ended. Ilara rose, smoothing her blouse again, cheeks flushed, hair slightly askew, but holding her head high. The restaurant staff gave polite nods, some whispering, some discreetly impressed. She exhaled, relief mingling with lingering panic. Stepping outside, she barely noticed Dominic's car parked across the street. He watched as she walked away, unknowing, chaotic, perfect in her imperfection. He didn't move, didn't intervene, yet the invisible thread was already pulling. Ilara Quinn walked down the Gold Coast street, unaware that a man, a shadow in a black Escalade, had already decided her presence mattered. She had survived her first trial, but Dominic Valenti had marked her. The game had begun, and neither of them knew where it would lead. Chicago's streets were a river of motion, cars and people flowing past like a living, breathing organism. Dominic Valenti moved through it all unseen, a shadow among the shadows, tracking Ilara Quinn from a distance. He wasn't following her out of idle curiosity. Every instinct in his body told him she mattered. Chaotic, unpredictable, unpolished, yet undeniably magnetic. Ilara moved through the city with the kind of survival grace only a woman who's been scraping by all her life could possess. She dodged potholes and careless cyclists with an almost dance-like rhythm, adjusted her skirt on the fly, and pulled a stray lock of hair behind her ear with a flick of composure. Dominic noticed it all, every small movement catalogued like a chess master observing a new piece on the board. At a street corner, Ilara paused to check her phone, brow furrowed as she navigated a sudden obstacle, a spilled coffee from a vendor's cart. Without hesitation, she helped the elderly man upright his toppled goods, while simultaneously keeping her bag from sliding off her shoulder. Dominic's dark eyes narrowed, resourceful, quick thinking, the perfect combination of charm and chaos. He followed her as she ducked into a narrow alley to avoid a group of construction workers, blocking the sidewalk. Dominic's car stayed several blocks behind, tinted windows hiding his intent, his presence, his obsession. The thrill wasn't in confronting her yet, it was in watching her maneuver, adapt, survive. She didn't know she was under observation, and Dominic preferred it that way. Ilara stepped into a small cafe, ordering coffee with a polite smile despite her disheveled look. A barista fumbled her order, spilling cream on the counter. She laughed softly, wiped it up, without complaint, and even offered a few kind words to calm him. Dominic studied the scene through his binoculars from a distance, noting the rare balance of toughness and tenderness. A woman like this didn't come along often, and even rarer still, one who could survive chaos without losing herself. As she left the cafe, she encountered a minor street scuffle, a man bumping into a child's stroller, shouting at the mother. Ilara intervened with calm but firm authority, separating the man and reassuring the mother. Dominic's smirk returned, shadowed by the serious intensity of his gaze. Protective instincts flared, not his usual business sense, not his usual calculated moves, but something deeper, more dangerous. Obsession. Everywhere she went, every choice she made, Dominic catalogued it. The way she crossed streets without hesitation, the subtle gestures of kindness she extended despite exhaustion, the raw determination in her eyes. The city pulsed around them, but in Dominic's mind, the chaos and movement blurred. Only Ilara mattered. By the time she returned to the apartment she rented on the far side of the Gold Coast, the sun was lower, painting the skyline in amber and shadow. Dominic lingered across the street, parked behind a row of black SUVs, just far enough to remain invisible. Her apartment building loomed in the distance, elegant and forbidding. He allowed himself a rare moment of dark admiration. She survived, thrived, and navigated a world that would have broken most people. And yet, she didn't even know he existed. Dominic Valenti's hands tightened on the steering wheel, the familiar thrill of control and danger mixing with something new, something volatile. She was chaos, yes, but controlled chaos was a weapon he intended to understand, and perhaps to own. The line between fascination and obsession blurred as the city lights flickered on, illuminating the edges of a storm that neither of them could yet fully predict. Alara Quinn was unknowing, unstoppable, and entirely alive in a way Dominic hadn't seen in years. He knew one thing for certain: her life, and his, was about to collide in ways neither of them were prepared for. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over Chicago's Gold Coast streets, turning the city into a golden maze of glass and concrete. Alara Quinn walked briskly, mind racing with everything she had to accomplish: groceries, bills, and the lingering panic from her interview at Romanos. She barely noticed the crowds, weaving through them with a practiced agility born from years of chaos. And then she collided with him. "Take care crossing here," he said, almost a warning, almost a promise. Alara forced a nod, heart still hammering, mind racing. "I will, thank you." Again. Dominic didn't respond further, turning to disappear into the crowd. And yet, as he walked away, Alara couldn't shake the impression of his gaze burning into her back, a silent promise that their paths were meant to cross again, and sooner than either of them expected. The collision had been accidental, the touch had been fleeting, the tension had been electric. But Chicago had just witnessed the beginning of something far more dangerous than a bump on the sidewalk. Dominic Valenti and Alara Quinn, chaos and control, fire and ice, were now on a collision, course neither could escape. The next day, Alara Quinn was back in the rhythm of her chaotic life, running errands, juggling bills, and dodging the city's endless motion. She barely had time to think about yesterday's street collision, convincing herself that she'd imagined Dominic Valenti's piercing gaze, that the brief touch had been nothing more than coincidence. But when her phone buzzed mid-afternoon, the message made her stomach drop. "Meet me tonight, Cafe Allegro. 7 p.m., business discussion, DV. Alara blinked. Her first instinct was suspicion. Who sends a message like that? What kind of man calls a collision on the street a business discussion? Her mind raced with possibilities: danger, fraud, a scam, a trap. And yet, curiosity had always been her weakness. By 7 p.m., she found herself standing outside Cafe Allegro, a small, dimly lit Italian cafe tucked in a quiet side street. The glow from vintage lamps spilled onto the cobblestones, painting the world in amber and shadow. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she approached the door, heart thumping in a way that wasn't entirely from nerves. Dominic Valenti was already there. He stood in the corner, the lamplight catching the angles of his face, strong jaw, dark eyes, and a smirk that was almost indulgent. He didn't rise, didn't approach. He simply waited, calm and commanding, a predator in a room full of ordinary prey. "Ms. Quinn," he said, voice low, smooth, magnetic. "I trust you got my message." "Yes," she said cautiously, sliding into the chair opposite him. "But I wasn't sure. Why me?" Dominic's eyes flicked toward her, sharp and calculating. Why anyone catches my attention is never simple. Sometimes the answer isn't as important as the choice to act. Alara tilted her head, wary but intrigued. His presence was overwhelming, controlled yet chaotic in its intensity. Every subtle movement, every glance, made her acutely aware of the air between them. "I'm here," she said finally, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "So, networking?" Dominic's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Yes, networking. But also observation, understanding. You see, Ms. Quinn, the world often misjudges people who survive chaos. They underestimate them, until it's too late." Alara's brow furrowed. Was this a threat, advice, or just Dominic being Dominic? Calculated, enigmatic, impossible to read? "You make it sound dangerous," she said, leaning back slightly, trying to reclaim her composure. "It is," he replied simply, eyes locking with hers, magnetic and unwavering. "But danger and opportunity often share the same path, and sometimes the right person finds themselves standing exactly where they're meant to be, even if they don't yet realize it." Alara felt a chill in her spine. His words carried weight, authority, and a strange allure. He wasn't just speaking. He was setting a trap, a challenge, a promise all at once. She studied him for a moment, caught in the tension of curiosity and caution. Then, before she could ask anything more, Dominic leaned back slightly, rising to leave. "Think about what I said," he murmured, voice low, teasing, commanding. "The world will test you. Opportunities are rare, and some are only offered once. Choose wisely, Alara." And just like that, he was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of expensive cologne, a lingering intensity, and the unmistakable pull of something dangerous. Alara Quinn remained seated, heartbeat racing, mind spinning. The collision on the street was no longer an accident. The encounter at Cafe Allegro was no longer casual. Something had shifted, and deep down, she knew one thing. Dominic Valenti had already altered the course of her life, whether she wanted it or not. Alara Quinn couldn't shake the memory of Dominic Valenti, the collision, the touch, the cryptic words at Cafe Allegro. Something about him lingered, impossible to ignore. And now, as she went about her daily routine, the edges of her reality seemed to shift, revealing fragments of a world she had never glimpsed before. It started subtly. Walking past her favorite boutique, she noticed two men lingering across the street, well-dressed, sunglasses despite the fading daylight, scanning the crowd with a precision that felt unnatural. Their eyes flicked to her as she passed. For a heartbeat, she thought it was coincidence, paranoia perhaps. But then she saw him, the same flash of dark hair and intense gaze through the tinted window of a sleek black SUV. Dominic Valenti, watching, waiting. Her pulse quickened. Questions collided in her mind. Why was he following her? Was it coincidence, protection, or something far darker? The next day, as she walked to the cafe where she sometimes worked late writing resumes and cover letters, she noticed subtle interactions she hadn't before. A man in a tailored suit subtly shifted to block a potential threat. Another whispered into an earpiece, eyes scanning the surrounding streets. When she looked up, she caught Dominic at the far end of the street, casually reading a newspaper. Yet every muscle in his frame exuded control and readiness. He wasn't just a man, he was a force. A presence that bent the world around him. Alara tried to convince herself that she was imagining it, that it was all coincidence. But then, the whispers started. Friends, colleagues, even strangers in the restaurant mentioned his name casually, with a hint of fear, respect, and awe. Dominic Valenti, a businessman, perhaps? Powerful? Definitely. Dangerous? Almost certainly. It was a single offhand comment at Romano's from a chef she trusted. You haven't seen him in action. He handles problems, quietly, efficiently. No one crosses him without consequences. Alara froze mid-step, the words echoing in her mind. The man who saved her from the street. Yesterday? The man who had a cryptic, commanding energy at the cafe? He wasn't just mysterious. He was untouchable, dominant, ruthless. A small incident later that evening cemented her unease. While leaving a grocery store, a man tried to aggressively demand she move from his path. Before she could react, two figures appeared seemingly out of nowhere, subtly but firmly steering the man away. Alara's eyes widened as she realized the same subtle precision in their movements, the same silent coordination she had seen Dominic orchestrate earlier. He didn't need to lift a finger. His presence alone had reshaped the moment. And then there were the little things she couldn't explain. A subtle warning in a glance, the way city officials seemed to defer to him without question, the faint scent of power that clung to him. Something she could almost taste in the air when she walked past him accidentally on the street. Alara's mind was spinning. She was drawn to him, yes, but fear intertwined with attraction. She didn't fully understand the extent of Dominic Valenti's world, yet pieces of it were slipping through the cracks. Power, danger, influence. It all radiated from him like heat from a flame. As night fell, she returned to her small apartment, heart racing, mind buzzing with images of black SUVs, shadowed figures, and Dominic's piercing gaze. He wasn't just a man she had bumped into on the street. He was a storm in human form, and she had stepped directly into the eye. And deep down, Alara Quinn knew one undeniable truth. She was in over her head, and yet she couldn't look away. The city was alive with movement, but Alara Quinn barely noticed. Her mind was consumed with routines, errands, and the lingering echo of Dominic Valenti's presence. What she couldn't see, but Dominic could, was how her every action, every decision, revealed her patterns, her instincts, her resilience. Dominic didn't follow her openly this time. He stayed hidden in plain sight, shadows his ally, observing as she moved through the world like a storm contained in a fragile frame. A park, a coffee shop, a street lined with shops. The day became a classroom, and she, unwittingly, his pupil. Ilara stopped at a crosswalk, waiting for the light. A cyclist swerved dangerously close, and without thinking, she shifted her bag, nudged the stroller of a nearby mother back into safety, and muttered a quick apology to the cyclist. Dominic noted everything: instinct, quick thinking, and empathy balanced with self-preservation. Then a minor test appeared, an offhand interaction with a street vendor who overcharged her for a small pastry. Ilara's voice was polite but firm. She refused the unfair price, negotiated calmly, and walked away with the pastry and dignity intact. Dominic's lips curved ever so slightly. Patience, tact, control under pressure. She didn't even know she was being evaluated. By midday, he had followed her to Romano's, watching from a discreet distance as she interacted with staff and patrons. Every tiny gesture, smiling, listening, correcting mistakes, without raising her voice, was catalogued, measured, judged. Dominic had spent years shaping and controlling the chaos around him. Now, he was watching someone who handled her own chaos instinctively, naturally, without training. And yet, the thrill for him wasn't just in observing, it was in teaching. He tested her subtly. A sudden rush of a waiter bumping into her, a spilled drink near her table, a street musician intruding on her path, small innocuous disruptions, but enough to see her reaction. She hesitated, adjusted, recovered, and moved forward as if nothing had happened. Dominic's dark eyes gleamed. Ilara, however, felt it, a faint awareness, a whisper on her skin, a shadow at the edge of her vision. Goosebumps rose along her arms. Something, or someone, was watching her. A chill ran down her spine, equal parts alarm and excitement. She glanced over her shoulder but saw nothing, only the ebb and flow of ordinary city life. Dominic leaned back in his seat across the street, just a figure among countless others, yet entirely dominant, entirely controlling. He loved this, the silent manipulation, the invisible challenge, the tension between chaos and order. And the way Ilara rose to meet it, unknowingly performing under pressure, fascinated him. He made no move to reveal himself yet. That would come later. For now, this was enough. Watching, testing, allowing her instincts to unfold naturally, observing how she handled unpredictability without breaking. Each minor victory she achieved in this invisible classroom only drew him deeper into obsession. As she finally walked toward her apartment, her pace slowed slightly. The street seemed emptier, quieter. Yet she couldn't shake the sensation of being followed or studied. Her heart beat faster, not with fear entirely, but with an inexplicable thrill. She couldn't explain why she felt both protected and exposed at the same time. Dominic watched her disappear into her building, hands lightly gripping the steering wheel of the car parked several blocks away. Chaos and control, fire and ice. He had just witnessed the raw, untrained strength that so few possessed. And he knew he would test her further, push her limits, see how far she could bend without breaking. For Ilara Quinn, the city was ordinary. For Dominic Valenti, it was a stage. And she was, unwittingly, the most intriguing performance he had ever encountered. The late afternoon light slanted across the streets of Chicago, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with every step Ilara Quinn took. She had finished a long day of errands and stopped near a quiet corner cafe, hoping for a moment of solitude. The city buzzed around her, but she felt watched. The familiar shiver ran down her spine, the sensation she had felt in fleeting glimpses before, but now it was stronger, undeniable. And then he appeared. Dominic Valenti stepped from the shadow of the alley, his presence consuming the space around her without a sound. Every detail was magnetic, dark, perfectly tailored suit, eyes that pierced like knives, and a calm authority that made the air feel heavier. She froze, heartbeat skipping, trying to mask the jolt of recognition. "Ilara Quinn," he said, voice low, smooth, and intoxicatingly controlled. "We keep running into each other." She took a half step back, adjusting her bag, heart racing. "I didn't realize..." Her words faltered. She wanted to seem composed, professional, unaffected, but she wasn't. Not with him. Dominic smiled faintly, a predator aware of his prey. "No, I don't think you did. But now, we're here, and I think it's time we stopped dancing around the edges." Ilara's green eyes narrowed, a mixture of defiance and apprehension. What do you want? Truth, he replied, stepping closer, his movement measured, deliberate, and perhaps honesty about you, about me, about the world you've just stumbled into. She laughed nervously, a sound that betrayed both fear and curiosity. I don't even know you. Why should I trust? Trust? His smile sharpened, a dangerous tilt. I'm not asking for trust. I'm asking for attention, observation, awareness. Consider it a private lesson. His dark eyes scanned her like a blade, measuring, weighing, assessing every reaction. You think you understand the chaos of your own life, Alara. But there's a larger game being played. And you, whether you like it or not, are part of it now. Her pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed that she should turn and run, but something in him, calm, controlled, magnetic, pinned her in place. Fire met ice. His presence was a storm, hers a spark resisting containment. And what if I don't want to play? She asked, voice trembling but steadying. Defiance flickered like a torch. Dominic tilted his head, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. Then you'll survive as best you can, or you'll be swept aside. But I think you're stronger than you realize. That chaos in you, it's not weakness, it's resilience. And resilience can be very useful. The air between them pulsed with tension, attraction, danger. She could feel it radiating from him. Tangible, intoxicating, impossible to ignore. Every glance, every word, a spark igniting a fire neither could fully control. Alara swallowed, forcing composure. You make it sound dangerous. It is, he said simply. But the thrill is in the danger, isn't it? Knowing you're alive, knowing you're being tested, knowing the stakes are higher than you've ever imagined. A pause. They stood only feet apart, two worlds colliding, her chaos, his control, fire against, ice. And then, without warning, Dominic stepped back, his smirk lingering, leaving her with the sense of his presence long after he walked away. Alara Quinn remained rooted, heart hammering, mind racing. The confrontation had been brief, yet seismic. She had seen the man behind the shadow, the predator beneath the charm. And, somewhere deep down, she realized, she wanted more, even as danger loomed. Dominic Valenti had claimed the first battle, and she, against every instinct, knew the war was just beginning. The city had a pulse tonight, and it wasn't the gentle hum of streetlights or the late-night chatter of diners. It was darker, more deliberate, an undercurrent of danger running just beneath Chicago's Gold Coast. Alara Quinn had no idea she was walking through a world that had already claimed her interest. And quietly, her protection. She left her apartment later than usual, tired from the day, hair pulled into a messy ponytail, bag slung haphazardly over one shoulder. Her mind wandered to mundane things, groceries, bills, the chaos of surviving, and she barely noticed the shadow following a few blocks behind. Dominic Valenti was always a step away. Not overtly, not in a way anyone else could detect. He was in the shadows, a ghost watching her with predatory precision. And tonight, a test had arrived unannounced. As she turned onto a dimly lit street, a man stepped suddenly from an alley, blocking her path. His posture was aggressive, his eyes sharp, and the way he moved suggested this wasn't a chance encounter. Alara froze. Instinct screamed to run, but her feet barely obeyed. The man smiled, a slow, menacing grin, and stepped closer. Before panic could fully set in, a shadow detached itself from the darkness. Dominic Valenti appeared at her side in a fluid, controlled motion. One hand lightly brushed her arm, guiding her out of harm's way. The man stopped, startled, sensing authority he couldn't confront. Dominic's eyes, dark and sharp, pinned him in place. "You've made a mistake," Dominic said, voice low, calm, but with a threat wrapped beneath the surface. Every syllable held weight. "I don't advise it again." The man hesitated, then melted back into the shadows, leaving Alara blinking, heart racing, mouth slightly open. She couldn't tell if she was more frightened or exhilarated. Who was that?" she asked, voice trembling. Dominic didn't answer immediately. He guided her a few steps further, scanning the street, before allowing her to breathe. "Irrelevant," he said finally, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "What matters is you're safe." Alara noticed small, subtle details she hadn't before. How the city seemed slightly rearranged around her, the way certain people gave a glance and moved on, the uncanny coincidences that now appeared in her life. Packages left at her door without explanation. A shadow moving just out of view when danger appeared. She began connecting the dots, reluctantly, fearfully. The man she had bumped into on the street. The cryptic words at Cafe Allegro, the subtle lessons in control he had tested her with. And now, this intervention. Alara's pulse quickened. She realized someone had been watching over her, someone powerful, capable of bending chaos into order, and she had been standing in his world without ever realizing it. Dominic didn't linger in explanation. He never did. He left the encounter as quietly as he had arrived, slipping back into the city's shadows, leaving Alara with the pounding of her heart, a lingering sense of electricity, and a dawning understanding. Her life was no longer entirely her own. She shook slightly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Part of her was terrified, the other part undeniably captivated. There was a force around her she didn't fully understand, a man who operated in darkness yet made her feel oddly protected. Dangerous, yes, but alive. And deep down, she sensed it. Dominic Valenti had claimed a corner of her world. Whether she wanted him there or not, the streets remained quiet, but for Alara Quinn, nothing would ever feel ordinary again. Danger had a name, influence had a shadow, and the rules of the city and her life had quietly shifted. The soft hum of the city faded as Alara Quinn approached the private entrance of Dominic Valenti's penthouse. The street below glimmered with the lights of Chicago, distant traffic, blending into a muted symphony. She had no idea what awaited her inside, only that she had accepted his invitation, drawn by a mix of curiosity, fear, and an undeniable pull she couldn't resist. The door opened before she could knock. Dominic stood there, composed, dark, magnetic. The faintest smile tugged at his lips, his eyes scanning her from head to toe, assessing, measuring, silently admiring. "Ms. Quinn," he said, voice low and controlled, "welcome." The apartment inside was an extension of him, sleek, immaculate, yet layered with subtle warmth, soft lighting, the faint scent of aged leather and whiskey, a hint of vanilla lingering in the air. The dining table was set for two, polished crystal and silver glinting, the atmosphere intimate yet charged with tension. Alara's pulse quickened as he gestured for her to sit. I didn't expect what?" he interrupted smoothly. "Luxury? Attention? Control?" His voice held amusement, authority, and a thread of something softer, something only she would notice. "This is simply the environment. The world shapes itself around choices, Alara. Tonight, this is yours to navigate." She sat, hands folded neatly in her lap, trying to appear calm while every nerve screamed. Dominic took his seat opposite her, the distance between them electric, charged. The first course arrived, delicate, precise, untouched by the chaos she was used to surviving in. Dominic watched her carefully as she ate, eyes dark, calculating, yet softening slightly, whenever she smiled, laughed nervously, or made a subtle remark. His duality was mesmerizing, ruthless, magnetic, dangerous, and beneath it there was a tenderness reserved only for her. "You handle yourself well," he said suddenly, voice low, "in the streets, in the chaos. But here, you're in my world. Every gesture, every glance, it matters." Alara's eyes met his. "Your world is different from mine," she said cautiously, aware of his intensity. "It's controlled, dangerous." Dominic leaned back slightly, smirk playing at the corner of his lips. "Dangerous, yes, but you navigate it instinctively. That impresses me." His gaze lingered, magnetic, as if weighing her, courage against his own curiosity. "I've seen strength, resilience, patience, and yet, you're chaotic, unpredictable, beautifully human." Alara felt heat rise to her cheeks. His words, his attention, his subtle dominance, it was intoxicating. She tried to maintain composure, but the pull was undeniable. Every glance, every pause, every calculated smile drew her further in. "Tell me," he said, leaning forward slightly, hand brushing close to hers across the table. "Do you understand the game you've stepped into? Or are you still thinking you control the board?" She swallowed, pulse racing. I don't know," she admitted honestly, a mix of fear and thrill threading through her voice. "Maybe. I just survive the chaos as it comes." Dominic's eyes softened for the briefest moment, just enough for her to glimpse the man beneath the predator. Then they hardened again, magnetic and commanding. "Good. Survival is a skill, but tonight is about something else. Choice, awareness, and perhaps temptation. The room fell into silence, but the air between them vibrated with energy. Danger and attraction intertwined, fire against ice. Alara Quinn realized that she was no longer just a spectator in his world. She was part of it. Dominic Valenti stood, offering his hand subtly yet deliberately. "Dinner isn't over," he murmured, voice low, teasing, dangerous. "It's only the beginning." And as she placed her hand in his, she felt it. The world she knew had shifted, ruthless and tender, magnetic and commanding. Dominic Valenti was no ordinary man, and she was no ordinary woman. Alara Quinn sat on the edge of her bed, the city lights spilling through her apartment window like molten gold. The events of the past week replayed in her mind. The street collision, the cryptic cafe meeting, the subtle interventions, the private dinner. Her heart still raced, and not entirely from fear. She pressed her palms to her face, letting out a shaky breath. What is happening to me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her thoughts were a storm, chaotic and relentless. Fear of the unknown, curiosity about the man who dominated her world, and a strange, undeniable pull that made her pulse flutter whenever she remembered the brush of his hand. Every instinct screamed caution. Every rational thought warned her against him. Yet, even with all her awareness, she found herself thinking about Dominic Valenti constantly. The way he moved through the world, controlled, precise, magnetic. The way he looked at her, not with desire alone, but with assessment, challenge, fascination. She hugged her knees, trying to untangle the knot of emotions. She was drawn to him in a way that frightened her. Attraction, fear, curiosity, and beneath it all, something dangerous, intoxicating, irresistible. Dominic's presence lingered in her mind like a shadow that refused to leave. And she hated herself slightly for noticing the tenderness hidden beneath his magnetic control. The subtle shift in his eyes when he watched her navigate chaos. The fleeting softness in his voice when he spoke to her privately. It was terrifying, and it made her ache. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Dominic. She hesitated before opening it. "Chaos is not weakness, Alara. You handle it better than anyone I've seen. Don't mistake my interest for leniency. This world will test you. But know this. I see you, all of you." Her breath caught. The message wasn't threatening, yet it carried weight. Awareness, recognition, a challenge wrapped in subtle admiration, and beneath it, a faint vulnerability, an acknowledgement that he valued her resilience, that she mattered to him in a way few ever had. Alara's chest tightened. She sat back against the headboard, heart racing, mind spinning. She couldn't decide if she was terrified or thrilled, or both. Part of her wanted to ignore it, walk away, reclaim control of her life, but the pull was undeniable. She felt like she was on the edge of a precipice, looking down into a stormy abyss where fear and desire collided. She whispered to herself, voice trembling, I don't even know him, but I can't stop thinking about him. Meanwhile, across the city, Dominic sat in the penthouse, alone but restless. He wasn't immune to the chaos Alara brought into his life. Her unpredictability gnawed at him, challenged him, intrigued him. He allowed himself a brief glimpse of vulnerability, a rare admission he would never voice aloud. She was not just a distraction. She was a force, resilient, chaotic, untamed. And he found himself thinking about her in ways that unsettled him, ways that blurred the lines between control and desire, danger and tenderness. He clenched his jaw, forcing the emotion down, masking it with his usual composed magnetic exterior. But it was there, undeniable and growing. Alara Quinn's chaos and Dominic Valenti's control were colliding, unseen but inevitable. Fire against ice. Attraction against fear. Desire against caution. And somewhere in that collision, a bond was forming. Fragile, dangerous, irresistible. She closed her eyes, letting out a shaky breath, trying to order her thoughts. But she couldn't. Not really. Because the truth was terrifying. She was drawn to him, and she had no idea where that pull would take her next. The night hummed with possibilities, and both predator and prey, Dominic and Alara, were aware, in their own ways, that their lives were about to be irreversibly changed. The city was cloaked in shadows, the night air thick with tension. Alara Quinn had barely settled into her apartment after the turbulent week, heart still pounding from thoughts of Dominic. Valenti, when a message appeared on her phone, no name, no sender, only 3 words. "Stay away, Quinn." Her pulse spiked. She reread it. Stay away. It wasn't casual. It carried threat, menace, intent. She sank into her chair, hands trembling slightly. Someone was watching. Someone knew her. Across the city, Dominic Valenti had already been aware. He had been expecting complications. In the world he ruled, there was always someone waiting to challenge power, someone reckless enough to threaten what he considered his domain. And now, that threat had extended to Alara. The first sign arrived later that evening. Alara was walking to her car after an overdue grocery. Run! A sleek black sedan slowed beside her. The window rolled down, revealing a familiar face. Lorenzo Caruso, a rival with a history of dangerous grudges and one of the few men Dominic tolerated even less than betrayal. His smirk was sharp, predatory, knowing. "You must be Alara Quinn," he said smoothly, voice laced with poison. Dominic's little distraction. "Careful, darling. Not everything in his world is safe for amateurs." Alara froze, instinctively stepping back. What do you want?" Her voice was steadier than she felt, but her gut twisted with fear. "I just wanted to say hello," Lorenzo said, mockingly polite, "and remind you, curiosity can be deadly." He stepped closer, a warning, a threat disguised as charm. Suddenly, the hair at the back of Alara's neck stood up. She could sense danger before it became physical, an instinct Dominic had trained her subtly to trust, even unknowingly. Before she could react further, a sleek black Escalade pulled up beside the sedan. The engine idled softly, tinted windows concealing the driver. Dominic stepped out, calm and deadly. Every step was measured, every movement exuding controlled menace. His eyes met Lorenzo's, sharp, predatory, and filled with the promise of violence restrained only by strategy. "Step away," Dominic said, voice low but ice-cold, dangerous. "Now." Lorenzo's smirk faltered. "Valenti." He spat the name like venom. "You think a woman changes. The game for you? This isn't a playground. She's a liability. She's under my protection," Dominic said darkly. "And anyone who underestimates her, or me, will regret it. Do you understand?" His tone carried absolute certainty and the lethal calm of a man used to bending chaos to his will. Lorenzo hesitated, calculating, then backed away slowly, hands raised slightly in mock surrender. Dominic's presence alone controlled the situation, but Alara had watched, frozen in awe and fear. She realized viscerally that Dominic was more than dangerous. He was untouchable when he chose to be, and he had deliberately brought her into his world. For better or worse, as the rival threat retreated into the night, Dominic turned to Alara, voice softer, but still commanding. "This world, and it's not safe. Not for the faint of heart. But you have something most people don't. Awareness, strength, resilience." Alara swallowed, trembling. Fear and adrenaline mixed with a pulse of excitement she couldn't deny. "Why me?" she whispered. Dominic's gaze softened for just a moment, hinting at the vulnerability beneath his ruthless exterior. "Because you're alive in ways most aren't," he said simply. "And the chaos you survive, it makes you remarkable." The night settled again, the city unaware of the danger that had just brushed past. But for Alara Quinn, the stakes had become terrifyingly clear. The world Dominic inhabited was lethal, and her life was now intertwined with his, whether she wanted it or not. The night was unusually quiet for Chicago's Gold Coast, the kind of stillness that made shadows deeper and every sound sharper. Alara Quinn had been walking home from a late dinner, mind still tangled in thoughts of Dominic Valenti, his dominance, his subtle vulnerability, the chaos he drew into her life. She didn't notice the black van trailing her from a distance. Engine idling softly, behind the veil of parked cars, a sudden movement, a hand over her mouth. Alara screamed, muffled, as she was pulled into the van with terrifying speed. The door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed her, heart pounding, panic clawing up her chest. She realized she had underestimated the danger she had been walking toward for weeks. Inside, the kidnappers spoke in low, clipped tones, unaware that their plan had already triggered a chain of events far beyond their comprehension. One reached for her bag, she kicked, struggled, but their grip was iron. Outside, Dominic Valenti had already sensed the disturbance. He had been tracking her subtle routines, watching over her from the shadows, anticipating threats even before they materialized. When the van moved, he didn't hesitate. Every muscle coiled, every step precise, every calculation deadly. The streets blurred as Dominic navigated in his Escalade, tinted windows reflecting the city, lights. He was calm, controlled, but beneath it, a storm simmered. He had trained for moments like this, but this wasn't about business. This was about her. His obsession, his fascination, His need to protect her burned hotter than any threat he had faced before. Minutes later, the van turned a corner into an industrial stretch near the docks. Dominic followed silently, vehicle blending with shadows. He observed the van's movements, analyzing, calculating. One wrong move, one hesitation, and Alara would pay the price. Then he struck, tires screeching, engine growling. He rammed the rear of the van just enough to unbalance it, forcing it to swerve. Armed men scrambled, surprised by the precision, but Dominic moved faster. Doors swung open, and with calculated violence, he incapacitated the kidnappers. Swift, efficient, controlled, leaving chaos in his wake. Alara, frightened and breathless, saw him emerge from the shadows, dark figure framed by the city lights. His eyes, those piercing magnetic eyes, locked on hers, and for a heartbeat, the world collapsed into just the two of them. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice low, controlled, laced with something softer that she hadn't fully heard before. I'm fine, she stammered, though adrenaline still pulsed through her veins. Dominic stepped closer, scanning her for any signs of injury. "You're not just fine," he murmured, his hand brushing her arm, a touch electrifying, protective, and possessive all at once. "You're lucky I was paying attention." Alara's knees nearly buckled under the intensity, her emotions a whirlwind, fear, relief, and that pull she couldn't resist. Her heart raced, and she realized, viscerally, that she had been tethered to him long before this moment. Dominic's presence was overwhelming, fire against her ice, control against chaos. And yet, for all his power and calculated violence, there was tenderness in the way he ensured she was safe, in the subtle attention he paid to her trembling form. The van lay abandoned, its occupants unconscious. Dominic helped her into the Escalade, silent but commanding. The city blurred past as he drove, every movement precise, every glance protective, every breath tethered to her. Alara Quinn realized as the adrenaline ebbed that the world she had stepped into was no longer hers alone. Dominic Valenti had claimed a corner of it, and her, through force, calculation, and an obsession she couldn't deny. And as the city lights flickered past, adrenaline mixing with attraction, she understood something she hadn't admitted. In Dominic's dangerous world, she felt more alive than ever before. The city lights outside blurred into streaks of gold and silver as Alara Quinn sat in Dominic Valenti's Escalade. The adrenaline from the recent kidnapping still pulsed through her veins, but now it was mingled with something she hadn't expected: anticipation, desire, a magnetic tension that had been simmering since the moment he had first entered her life. Dominic's hands gripped the steering wheel with his usual controlled precision, but when he glanced at her even briefly, the calm exterior cracked ever so slightly. His dark eyes, usually so guarded, were alive with intensity, dark fire that seemed to burn through her defenses. "Alara," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "Do you understand what just happened tonight?" She swallowed, trying to steady her voice. I think so," she admitted. Though the truth was, she wasn't sure she fully did. Her heart raced, her mind spun, and she was acutely aware of the nearness of him, the weight of his presence, the raw power radiating from him. "No," he said, leaning slightly closer, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. "Do you feel it?" Before she could respond, he moved, faster than she expected. His hand came to her cheek, tilting her head up gently but with undeniable authority. The air between them became electric, charged with danger and desire. Alara's breath hitched. "Dominic," she whispered, but the word was lost as he closed the distance. The kiss was sudden, passionate, desperate. His lips captured hers with an intensity that left no room for hesitation. He dominated the moment, asserting control while simultaneously pulling her into the vulnerability she had been resisting. Fire met ice. Every nerve in her body ignited as she struggled, instinctively resisting, but the pull was overwhelming. Her hands pressed against his chest, feeling the strength beneath the tailored suit, the undeniable power he carried like a weapon. She tried to pull back, to reclaim control, but the desire, the chaos, the magnetic danger of him made her relent. Slowly, hesitantly, she yielded. The world outside, the city, the night, the danger, disappeared. There was only Dominic and her, a collision of chaos and control, fear and longing, dominance and surrender. When he finally broke the kiss, if only for a breath, his forehead rested lightly against hers. His dark eyes searched hers, and for a fleeting moment, the ruthless, untouchable Dominic Valenti softened. "You don't fight me badly," he murmured, voice low and intimate, a dangerous smile in his tone. "But you can't hide from this, from me." Ilara's chest heaved. Her lips tingled from the intensity of the kiss, her mind racing, her heart tangled in fear and longing. I don't know what's happening," she admitted, voice shaking but honest. Dominic's hand slid to her neck, gentle yet commanding, thumb brushing her jaw. "You do," he whispered. "You feel it, the danger, the chaos, and the pull, the attraction, the fire." She wanted to protest, to assert control, but the truth was undeniable. Every instinct screamed, both warning and surrender. She was utterly captivated, entirely drawn to him, even as fear lingered. The car hummed along the quiet streets, but inside, a storm had erupted. For the first time, the barriers between predator and prey, chaos and control, fire and ice, were shattered. And in that moment, dark romance claimed its first victory. Ilara Quinn, fierce, resilient, and untamed, had yielded, if only slightly, to Dominic Valenti, magnetic, dangerous, and utterly consuming. And the world, with all its dangers and power, plays no longer seemed quite so simple. The rain fell in thick sheets over Chicago, streaking the city lights into long, fractured lines of color. Ilara Quinn's hands trembled as she clutched the umbrella, each step feeling heavier than the last. She had agreed to meet Dominic Valenti after his cryptic message, an invitation she knew would change everything. Inside his penthouse, the space seemed calm, immaculate, deceptively serene, but Ilara could feel the tension under the surface, the kind that comes with unspoken truths and dangerous power. Dominic stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, backlit by the cityscape. He didn't move when she entered. He simply waited, watching, dark and commanding. "Ilara," he said, voice low, controlled, magnetic. "You deserve to know the truth. I can't let you walk blindly any longer." Her pulse quickened, the storm outside echoing the storm inside her chest. "Dominic, what do you mean?" she asked, voice wary but curious, fear mingling with the undeniable pull she felt for him. He stepped forward slowly, each movement deliberate. "I'm not just a businessman. Not merely someone who moves through this city with charm and influence. I am part of something far darker, far more dangerous." Her breath hitched. She had sensed it, the subtle interventions, the silent warnings, the calculated rescues, but hearing it aloud made the world tilt. "I'm Mafia," he admitted, the words heavy, deliberate, like a blade cutting through the air. "I control operations, enforce rules, eliminate threats. I move in shadows, make deals, and sometimes I do what others can't. It's a life of control, power, and danger. And Ilara, now, you're part of it." She staggered back slightly, disbelief and fear warring with the attraction that had been building for weeks. "You're a criminal," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Everything, the interventions, the danger, the way you move through the city, it's all illegal?" Dominic's dark eyes softened fractionally, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "Yes," he said. "But my rules, my control, it's not chaos for its own sake. It's calculated. Every move, every decision, it's about survival. Yours, mine, those who are loyal, and those who threaten us." Her mind raced, flashing back to the kidnapping, the threats from Lorenzo Caruso, the danger she had barely escaped. And yet, her pulse also remembered the touch, the kiss, the magnetic, intoxicating presence of Dominic. Desire and fear tangled inside her. "So, all of it," she whispered, "was real? The danger, the protection, the obsession?" He nodded slowly. "All real. I never lied. But I kept the full truth from you because it's dangerous. For you, for me, for anyone close to me. And yet," his gaze pierced hers, softer, now intimate. "I couldn't keep you at a distance." Ilara's stomach twisted, caught between attraction and morality. Every instinct screamed to run, to stay safe, to reject the chaos that was now undeniably his world. But another voice, a quieter, reckless one, whispered that she couldn't. She was drawn to him. She had been drawn to him from the start. "I don't know if I can be part of this," she admitted, tears threatening, heart racing. "I don't know if I should." Dominic stepped closer, dark, magnetic, his presence overwhelming. "You're not part of it, because you have to be," he said, voice low, commanding. "You're part of it because you choose to be. That choice, it's yours. I won't force it, but I will protect you, and I will be honest." The room felt impossibly small, charged with tension, desire, and danger. Alara Quinn realized that nothing in her life had prepared her for this. The man she was drawn to, the chaos she couldn't resist, and the moral lines she wasn't sure she could cross. And Dominic Valenti, ruthless, magnetic, terrifyingly honest, stood before her, the storm of his world laid bare. She had a choice now, but the pull, the fire, and the attraction were already too strong to ignore. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective, the city shimmering like broken glass. Dominic Valenti's penthouse felt impossibly quiet after the chaos of the past days, the kidnapping, threats, confessions. For once, the predator stepped back, the city outside, temporarily irrelevant. Alara Quinn sat on the edge of the sofa, legs crossed, eyes tracing the patterns of the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Dominic remained near the kitchen island, a glass of whiskey in hand, watching her with that magnetic intensity she both feared and craved. "Why are you still here?" she asked, voice soft but edged with curiosity. Her pulse quickened. The question was innocent, but she knew it carried the weight of the chaos she had stepped into. Dominic took a slow sip, his gaze never leaving her. "Because leaving you alone isn't an option," he said, voice low, controlled. "Not when danger is still out there, not when—" his voice faltered slightly, a rare crack in his otherwise unbreakable armor. "Not when I'm invested." Alara blinked. Invested. The word struck her. It was more intimate than protection, more personal than obligation. She felt the pull, the dangerous intensity that had haunted her dreams for weeks. She began, unsure. "I feel everything with you. Fear, confusion, attraction, and sometimes safety. Even though I know you're—" her voice trailed off. "Dangerous." Dominic's shoulders eased slightly. He set the glass down and walked closer, each step deliberate, magnetic. "I am dangerous," he admitted, "but not to you. Never to you." His dark eyes softened, the first real vulnerability she had seen. "Most people never get to see the man behind the mask. The chaos you see, that's only part of who I am." She hesitated, studying him, heart hammering. "Then show me the rest," she whispered, almost pleading. "I need to understand. I need to know who I'm—" Her words broke as the weight of her emotions caught her off guard. "Who I'm feeling all of this for." Dominic paused, then seated himself across from her, voice low, intimate. "I wasn't always this man," he began, carefully, deliberately. "I lost people I loved, people I trusted. I learned early that weakness could kill you, that chaos is survival. I built walls, I built control. Power became the only language that made sense." Alara's throat tightened. I know fear," she admitted softly. "I've been alone. I've lost things. People. I've survived chaos too, but sometimes it feels like surviving isn't enough. Sometimes it feels like you're just holding yourself together by a thread." Dominic's gaze softened further, drawn to her raw honesty. "And yet, here you are," he murmured almost to himself. "Resilient, strong, not broken, not entirely alone." Alara felt warmth spread through her chest. The man who had seemed untouchable, magnetic, ruthless, was real in this moment, vulnerable, human, and yet just as dangerous. Her hand, almost unconsciously, reached for his. He allowed it, neither moving too quickly nor too slowly, letting the contact linger. "I don't know if I can handle everything you carry," she whispered. "And I don't know if I can handle letting you go," he replied honestly, the admission raw and unguarded. "But right now, right here, we have this. We have each other." For the first time, fire and ice didn't clash. They intertwined, the chaos of their worlds, the danger, the desire, and the emotional scars fused into a fragile, intense connection that neither could ignore. Alara Quinn realized something essential. In Dominic Valenti, she had found not just danger or obsession, but a man capable of deep feeling. And he had found in her someone capable of seeing beyond power and chaos into the heart beneath. For one quiet electric night, the walls between predator and prey, chaos and control, fear and desire, dissolved. The city was alive with the hum of late-night traffic and distant sirens, but inside Dominic Valenti's penthouse, time felt suspended. Alara Quinn stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, the glow of Chicago lights casting sharp shadows across her face. Dominic's presence behind her was magnetic, overwhelming, like gravity itself. "Alara," he said, voice low, deliberate, pulling her attention. "Tonight there's no ambiguity, no shadow games. You need to understand, this isn't a life you can step into halfway." Her heart raced, pulse hammering in her ears. She had felt danger, desire, obsession, and vulnerability in Dominic before, but this was different. This was a decision that could define everything. "I know," she said softly, though uncertainty trembled in her voice. "I know what I'm stepping into. But, Dominic, it's not just about danger. It's about you, and me, and what this could be." Dominic stepped closer, every movement controlled, commanding yet somehow intimate. "Alara, my world isn't forgiving. It's ruthless. I operate on rules that most people wouldn't survive." His dark eyes bore into hers, vulnerability laced with danger. "If you stay, you need to trust me, completely. No hesitation, no retreat. Do you understand?" She swallowed, feeling the weight of the choice. Part of her wanted safety, predictability, the world she had fought to navigate on her own. But the pull, the fire, the chaotic magnetism of Dominic Valenti, it had ensnared her heart. I trust you," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. "But this doesn't feel like a decision I can take lightly. If I step fully into your world, there's no turning back." Dominic's hand brushed hers, tentative yet commanding. "And I wouldn't let you turn back, not fully, because if you choose me, you're choosing more than danger. You're choosing loyalty, obsession, and yes, love, something real, something rare in my life." Her chest tightened, mind spinning. Danger versus desire. Safety versus love. Rationality. Screamed to run, to protect herself. But her heart, reckless and untamed, argued differently. She felt alive in his world, adrenaline, passion, and unpredictability, mingling in a way she had never experienced. Dominic closed the distance, his lips brushing her temple lightly, almost tenderly. "Alara, you don't need to decide out of fear. Decide because of this," he murmured, voice raw, magnetic, as his forehead rested against hers. "Because what we have is worth the chaos, worth every risk." Tears pricked her eyes, conflicting emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "And if I fail?" she whispered. "If I can't handle this, what happens to us?" He held her gaze, dark intensity mixed with genuine vulnerability. "Then we adapt, together. I'll carry the weight. But you need to step into it willingly, not because you have to, because you choose to." The tension between them was electric, both physical and emotional. Fire met ice. Attraction met fear. Desire met morality. Every second stretched, the world outside irrelevant. Finally, Alara exhaled, heart hammering. "I choose you," she said, voice trembling but resolute. "I choose us, and I'll face whatever comes, as long as it's with you." Dominic's lips captured hers in a desperate, consuming kiss, a mix of triumph, relief, and magnetic desire. It wasn't just passion, it was a promise, a pact forged in fire, danger, and unspoken devotion. The room hummed with the electricity of their choice. Danger would follow, threats would loom, but in this moment, Alara Quinn had stepped fully into Dominic Valenti's world, and he had trusted her completely. High stakes, chaos, and dark romance converged. The city outside could rage, rival threats could emerge, but their bond, intense, dangerous, and unbreakable, had claimed victory. And in the shadows of the night, both predator and prey, chaos and control, fire and ice, were finally aligned. The city was a storm of lights and shadows, Chicago alive with movement and noise. But inside Dominic Valenti's private warehouse, time seemed suspended. Dominic and Alara stood at the center, tension crackling like electricity. Tonight, all threats, all chaos, and all unspoken desire came to a head. Lorenzo Caruso's men had made their move. Weapons glinted in the dim light, faces masked, with menace. The rival faction had thought they could seize Dominic's empire by targeting Alara, his obsession, his weakness. But Dominic Valenti had anticipated every move, every step, every danger. "Alara, stay close," Dominic ordered. Voice low, controlled, magnetic. His dark eyes swept over her, calculating, protective, and undeniably possessive. "No mistakes, not tonight." She nodded, pulse racing, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Fear mingled with desire. The chaotic pull she had felt for weeks now sharpened into clarity. She was part of his world, fully, consciously, and she would not flinch. The first gunshot echoed, ricocheting off metal. Dominic moved like a shadow, lethal, precise, taking down one threat after another. Every motion was calculated, controlled, deadly, his. Dominance and obsession made manifest in physical form. Alara ducked instinctively behind a crate, heart hammering. But Dominic's presence was immediate, magnetic. He reached for her hand, fingers intertwining with hers, grounding her in the eye of the storm. "Trust me," he whispered, voice raw, intimate. "You're mine, always." Her chest tightened, fear and longing mingling. "I trust you," she said, the words both surrender and declaration. The gunfire intensified, rival men closing in. But Dominic's focus was unbreakable, eyes blazing, with a predator's precision. He dispatched the last of the attackers with a mixture of strength and calculated violence, each movement protecting Alara without hesitation. By the time the dust settled, the warehouse was silent, threat neutralized. Alara's legs felt weak, her body trembling, but Dominic's arms wrapped around her, protective, commanding, and intimate. He pressed her close, dark eyes scanning hers for reassurance, for life, for acknowledgement. "You're safe," he murmured, voice low, almost tender in contrast to the chaos that had just passed. "Because you stayed. Because you chose me." Her hands moved to his chest, feeling the strength beneath the tailored suit, the lethal energy coiled like a spring, and yet the warmth, the vulnerability that only she had glimpsed. I chose us," she whispered, voice breaking with emotion. "All of it. Even the danger, even the chaos." Dominic's lips found hers, and the kiss was not just desire. It was triumph, relief, obsession, and love all rolled into one. The storm outside mirrored the storm within, rain tapping against the warehouse windows, lightning illuminating the intensity of the moment. When they finally pulled back, foreheads resting together, eyes locked, the unspoken promise lingered. Whatever chaos, danger, or darkness came next, they faced it together. Predator and partner, fire and ice, chaos and control. Their bond was forged in peril, passion, and vulnerability, and nothing could undo it. Outside, the city raged, unaware of the battle won within these walls. But Dominic and Alara didn't care. The world could challenge them tomorrow. Enemies could rise again. But tonight, they were untouchable. Alara Quinn, fierce, resilient, and untamed, had stepped fully into Dominic Valenti's world. And Dominic Valenti, lethal, magnetic, and obsessive, had allowed someone to stand beside him, someone who could challenge him, inspire him, and love him despite everything. In the quiet aftermath, as adrenaline faded into a simmering warmth, they held each other close, the city lights casting fractured patterns across their faces. Fire and ice, darkness and desire, chaos and control. They had survived together, and their bond was stronger than ever. The storm inside them mirrored the storm outside, and for once, they didn't need to fight it. They were together. Dangerous, passionate, unstoppable, and finally, free to choose each other. Did you feel that? The danger, the obsession, the chaos that pulls them together. This is only the beginning of Alara Quinn and Dominic Valenti's story. If your heart's racing, if the thrill of love and power drew you in, don't miss what comes next. Hit that subscribe button now and step deeper into a world of dark romance, secrets, and unforgettable moments. Because in this city, danger waits for no one, but passion waits for you.